their activities were, what they know about the activities of their housemates.
A new wrinkle, former LAPD detective Mark Furman, yes, that Mark Furman from the O.J. Simpson trial, now lives in Idaho and is claiming that victim Kaylee Gonsalves had a stalker.
I talked to one student, and I agree with this. It was twice removed from the person that said it, Kaylee, but Kaylee 2 months ago complained about a stalker.
Only when This social media video shows all 5 women in the kitchen of the house they shared. We're learning that the killer, for some reason, bypassed the rooms where the 2 young survivors were sleeping.
Their story was they heard partying, they heard noise, but they just, as usual, said, there's partying going on. They locked the door.
Another mystery, where was Kaylee's dog the night of the killings? Why didn't his barking wake everyone up? Autopsies on the 4 students found each had multiple stab wounds. Some had defensive wounds, showing they fought with the attacker. And there was no sexual assault. County Coroner Kathy Mapput is describing the murders as personal.
Were they found in beds?
Yes. There were multiple stab wounds. The fatal ones were to the chest area or the upper body area.
The father of Xana Kernodle says her wounds show she fought for her life.
Bruises, maybe hurt by the knife or whatever. She's a tough kid. Whatever she wanted to do, she could do it.
And they heard partying, they heard noise, but they just, as usual, said, there's partying going on. They locked the door.
Another mystery.
Those 4 University of Idaho students were learning now that just after 3 a.m, police got a call about a disturbance outside a frat house, just a short walk from the crime scene. The murders happened not long after that call. But is there a connection? Jim Murray reports.
A mysterious 911 call sent cops rushing to the street the night the 4 University of Idaho students were murdered. Police logs from that fateful night show a disturbance in this field outside the Sigma Chi Fraternity. The Moscow, Idaho Police Daily Activity Log reveals officers responded to an alcohol offense at 3:01 a.m. That's right around the time police say the murders were committed. How close is that frat house to the murder scene? Let me show you. Here's the frat house. You walk across the street and right through these apartment buildings. You then continue up this narrow path, and then you walk up these wooden stairs. And there you are, right at the house.
This is exactly where the figures were running from. They said they would do it within 19 minutes, no phones. And there was a fight at the Sigma Chi. The police got a call. Plus there was the alcohol stop where the undercover stopped the 3 boys and Saeed. So there was a lot going on. And that is when the unalivings happened. Allegedly. Why did they change their timelines? I don't even think the surviving roommates were at home. As soon as they saw the rummaging, they ran outside the house. They must have been calling the victims from outside the house. There's a car waiting outside. If you look at the reflection, I believe it's a red color car. Wasn't there the red Mustang that crashed in St. Deacon's Avenue, where the forensic team was checking it? So you heard Mark Furman, the detective, saying that somebody told him that Kaylee had a stalker, and the surviving roommates heard noises upstairs, but they thought it was a party. Isn't that strange? They're used to partying upstairs. So was it a party that went wrong with the Banfield boys and the figures? Or did they just come and attack them? We have blood DNA on the railing, and we have 1 glove. There's 2 DNAs, and one of the Banfield boys is wearing only 1 glove. It's all adding up from the very beginning. Maddie and Zana used to work together at the Mad Creek. I wonder if any stalkers or any peeping toms started following them from there. It's so sad that they lost their life and they're so young. Guys, the breaking news is that News Nation is saying that Ann Taylor is not allowed to present the DNAs. So is that the frank hearing that the judge denied? Sounds like that. You can watch it on News Nation. It just came out 20 minutes ago. I think that's so unfair. This is interesting. This is what Brian Anton wrote. Moscow detectives are interested in speaking with the occupants of a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra with an unknown license plate. Police say the vehicle was in the immediate area of the house where the unalivings happened during the early morning hours of November 13th. So you heard that clearly. The police were searching for occupants with the S of a white 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Even if BK was around those areas, which he said he wasn't, that doesn't put him inside the house. His blood was not found inside the house and inside the car. Inside his car. No matter how much you wash it, it would have come. Something would have come out eventually. The knife sheath could have been easily planted. Where was DM and where was Bethany Funk? Bethany Funk had to get her rugs out of the house. She couldn't call 911. The proof is, the evidence is in the Venmos. You can go back to my recent clips. I'll show you all about what Bethany Funk was up to. So they could hear the screaming, they could hear Xana defending herself. Why did Xana want to change her locks or fix her locks? There was some kind of concern, some kind of danger. Why was Kaylee studying from home? I don't believe this was some random person who just came in and decided to attack 4 people, leave 2 surviving roommates, one who's a witness who saw him, allegedly. This doesn't make sense. There's Jack D. and Murphy. Jack D doesn't look right to me, especially his face. Where was he ruled out as the last person? Even Steve didn't trust him in the beginning, neither did his son. Was he actually sleeping? Police search for white Hyundai Elantra seen near Moscow murder house. So it was just seen around the house. Why would Brian Koberger just take the risk to come inside this house? Wait for the lights to go off and then just come inside and unalive 4 people. That doesn't make sense. What about the figures running? That lines up with the 4chan. This was unalivings of revenge, hate, anger. This was pre-planned. And it's shocking that they're getting away with it. Maddie is really pissed off with Hooligan. Look at the guys behind him. This was all a plot. It was a setup. Sad. William Thompson, the prosecutor, and the other female prosecutor was always there from the very beginning. And prosecutors usually join the case later when the trial starts. What was he doing so early in this case? And he kept on saying the resident was the target. Were they selling rugs like Bethany Funk? So they're trying to tell us it's a strong man who came in and unlived 4 people, let the 2 surviving roommates, one of them who's a witness who saw him, and a dog survive. Doesn't make sense. I wonder what these officers saw. Are they pointing to the roof or the tree? Actually, DM's room. Interesting. I remember in the beginning, the 3 unidentified male DNAs, one of them you clearly see on the Good Vibe picture. The other one was the glove, and the third one was the Vans diamond shape underneath shoe that was found in front of DM's room. But now we have the 4th one, that is blood on the railings. I think there was a fight here in the living room. Look at all the blood on the wall. There was definitely a fight in the living room. And I think, like Xana's father said, she was at home chilling. Xana and E must have come home from the Sigma Chi fraternity after the fight broke out with the Davids. And they must have been hiding and waiting for them at home. And the Banfield boys. Something definitely happened in the living room.
The 4th was there visiting his girlfriend. Police believe they were targeted. With us now is retired agent and former FBI profiler Mary Ellen O'Toole. She's the director of George Mason University's Forensic Science Program. Mary Ellen, it's great to talk to you again, although sadly, tragically, we're always talking to you when something horrific has happened. So when you look at this story, Mary Ellen, what sticks out to you about this case and what investigators are looking for?
Well, there are a couple of things that really stand out to me. And I know investigators said that the victims were targeted, and that's a behavioral term that has a lot of meaning to me. So the question is, how are they making that determination? And were they all equally targeted? And the way that assessment has to be made is to see if any of the victims were treated differently in that crime scene. In other words, if one victim received more injuries or was treated differently after the stabbing occurred. And that usually tells you that that person could have been the focus of the attack. And then secondly, this offender had to leave a lot of evidence at that crime scene. He was not evidence conscious, and so there will be forensic evidence. For example, it's likely that the offender cut themselves with the knife. After you stab that many times, your hand goes down on the blade and you cut yourself and you leave blood there, and that's DNA evidence. And so that evidence is going to be extremely important. And then finally, just based on going inside somebody else's home in the middle of the night with other people there to commit a quadruple homicide suggests to me that that person has likely been in that home prior to this attack, and that this individual, this offender, has prior experience being in other people's homes.
So, Mary Ellen, I'm wondering about the time frame here. Are there any gaps in the timeline from when the victims were last seen and when they were found dead?
It does seem that there's some gaps and that information may not ever be able to be filled in, because the victims themselves would be the ones to tell you, we got home at this time and then we went to bed at that time. So I don't know that that will ever be completed, but The question remains, at what point did the offender get inside that house? And were all the victims, they were in their beds is what it sounds like, but were they all asleep? If they were not all equally asleep in a deep sleep, that could also explain some of the defensive injuries on several of the victims, although that's not been clarified. So that timeline is getting narrower and narrower, but I'm not sure it will ever be pinned down 100%.
Mary Ellen, the murder weapon, what kind of murder weapon, what are you hearing about what could have been used? I just keep thinking that it's such a brutal attack to use an object to murder, 4 people. I'm trying to understand. It's just impossible to understand because doesn't it strike you, Mary Ellen, and you're the expert here, that this would be of an extreme personal nature to use a weapon like that, an object like that to murder 4 people, as opposed to a gun, which we've covered these mass shootings, and oftentimes the perpetrators don't know any of the victims, at least in the last couple of weeks, the ones that we've been reporting on. What does that tell you?
Well, when an offender uses a knife, they have to get close up and personal with the victim. And that means that they can see their face, they interact with them, especially if the victim is fighting back, and they see the victim slowly losing their life. Here's what I'd also say about this knife. It had to be a pretty sturdy knife because it survived the stabbing of 4 people multiple times. Now, the medical examiner who performed the autopsy, they traditionally don't say, well, the weapon used here was exactly this. They can tell you elements of the instrument, but in my experience, they don't traditionally say it is exactly this, especially if you're dealing with a sharp-bladed instrument. But I'd also say that this offender, even though sloppy in the crime scene, leaving so much evidence, he was very efficient with this knife. He was able to complete 4 homicides and then leave the scene. That tells me this person has experience with that knife, a very effective cutting instrument, and that whether or not he would then or she would then throw that instrument away in the woods someplace is doubtful to me, because this is an instrument that's important to that offender. And I do think, based on the efficiency of those homicides, that the knife has been used before, not necessarily in another murder, but that the offender has used it before in other instances.
It's absolutely chilling, Mary Ellen, to hear you talk about that and efficiency when we're talking about the taking of human lives. I mean, based on what we know so far, what type of person or potentially group of people is most likely to commit an act like this?
Based on what I know so far, and again, that's coming from the media, this kind of violence is indicative of what we call instrumental violence, which is different from the traditional violence called reactive violence. Reactive violence is, if I punch you in the nose and you punch me back, that's reactive violence. But this instrumental violence is violence that is cold-blooded, it's predatory, and it's very callous type of violence perpetrated frequently on strangers. And this type of violence is oftentimes the kind of violence that we seek used by people that are psychopathic. The old-fashioned term was sociopath. But psychopathic individuals, not mentally ill, so I want to make that clear right away, but they are people who are profoundly lacking in empathy and guilt for their behavior. And when they do commit crimes, their crimes have a very high-risk element to it because they enjoy the thrill of whatever the crime is. If it's killing people, they enjoy having it be even more high risk than it needs to be. And this was a very high-risk crime. When you go into somebody's home in the middle of the night and kill them, that's very high risk.
Do you believe?
I totally agree with Mariano, the FBI former expert in behavior unit. This was a crime of rage, anger, psychopathic. Could this be the knife they used? David Lodge. This happened 3 years ago. Drug trafficking on campus. 22 people got arrested. They were from the frats.
charges after a major trafficking bust in Orange County. It involves 3 North Carolina colleges and universities, App State, Duke, and Carolina. CBS 17's Bridget Chapman joins us live at UNC in Chapel Hill. And Bridget, this investigation pretty broad over several years, right?
Yeah, Russ, it dates back to 2017. Officials say they then found drugs were being trafficked at the 3 campuses, drugs ranging from marijuana to cocaine to various pills. Now, 21 people are facing federal charges. Many of them are either current or former students from Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, and App State. This all started when the Orange County Sheriff's Office started looking into drugs being sold in the area, specifically at 3 fraternities. Officials said over the years, the drug ring funneled over 1,000 pounds of marijuana, several hundred kilograms of cocaine, and more. Officials say they arrested a supplier in California who was shipping and driving drugs here. In one case, a person paid $15 grand for cocaine over the course of 32 drug deals. The sheriff said overdoses were also happening.
It unfolded unlike any other case I've seen in my 40 years in law enforcement. Brazen attitudes, casual use of just high volumes of drugs. Then the network started to unfold about the money.
Us now. Officials say this operation involved more than $1.5 million worth of drugs. They say more arrests are expected as the investigation continues. Reporting live in Chapel Hill, Bridget Chapman, CBS 17 News.
So there's definitely drug trafficking going on in colleges. I wonder if that was going on in Idaho, Moscow. Bethany Funk is dealing rugs through her Venmos. I wonder who else was dealing in the house. It was a party house, and the taxi driver said he drove many people there to get rugs. Was there a rug element? In the beginning we were told that Maddie flushed rugs worth $75,000, if it is true. This is all speculations, guys. So were they dealing rugs? Maybe the surviving roommates